What do you do in those scenarios where it's not high A cost, it's not high spend, it's not necessarily low A costs? We would call that these terms are essentially low visibility terms, but the typical advice for low visibility terms is you just increase the bids, and that's kind of the end of the logic. And if you're just doing that, you can end up with this problem in your hand, the death by 1,000 cuts, which is just, thousands of silent killers that never raise any alarms, but cumulatively are draining your account.
I am super excited about today's tip. I have on Stephen Noch from AdLab. So they're building an amazing software, and we're here to talk about getting rid of ad waste in your account, specifically the sneaky ad waste. But before we dive into your tip, I would love you to want to give a quick intro, background on yourself.
Sure. Yeah, I am Stephen Noch. I've been managing Amazon PPC campaigns for about 6 years now, and that's really all I am at heart. I'm just a PPC manager. I only work with like 3 or 4 brands right now. I'm just kind of freelancing, and a lot of these brands I've just been managing for the past several years. But I needed a way to streamline the manual bid management of ads because I just really like being in control. I've always ever used bulk sheets. I've tried a lot of automation tools, even like the rule-based stuff. I was never just a big fan of it. So that's why we created AdLabs. It's basically just streamlined manual bid management. It's like bulk sheets, but connected to the API and in a streamlined web application. So that's all we do.
Amazing. No, I'm super excited because I know you get super tactical with a lot of the data and optimization. So the thing that we're tackling today, or that you said you want to talk about today, is this concept of a death by 1,000 cuts problem. A lot of times people talk about or a low data problem or an ad waste problem. But do you want to just clarify really quick what we're talking about when you say, all right, death by 1,000 cuts?
Yeah. So when I think of bid optimization opportunities for your keywords, there's you have your high ACoS keywords, which is pretty standard, just like target ACoS 30%, apply a filter for everything over 30%, right? Like those things are going to need some optimizations. And then there's also the high spend, no sales scenario. So if anything has calculate what your target cost per acquisition is, and anything that is spent beyond the target cost per acquisition and hasn't gotten a sale, you're going to need some optimizations there. The question is, what do you do with the stuff that's one click, no sale? It's not a problem, hasn't spent a lot. There's no ACoS yet, and it doesn't seem like a problem, but you have thousands of these keywords all adding up to wasted spend. And if you just look at all of the total non-converting clicks from your targets or your search terms, you'll be astonished sometimes with what comes up. And I've seen some accounts where over 50% of all the spend in their account is not converting. And this conversation is really about what do you do in those scenarios where it's not high ACoS, it's not high spend, it's not necessarily low ACoS. We would call that these terms are essentially low visibility terms. But the typical advice for low visibility terms is you just increase the bids, and that's kind of the end of the logic. And if you're just doing that, you can end up with this problem in your hand, the death by 1,000 cuts, which is just, thousands of silent killers that never raise any alarms, but cumulatively are draining your account.
That is a really great specific definition. I agree with you. And I'm really interested to hear your take on how you manage this, because there's sort of this, it's a low data problem. You're kind of spanning the line between it's almost like potential waste. Some of these may convert, right? If I have a 10% conversion rate, I technically have to wait 10 clicks to know if something absolutely is not going to convert. So I want to be careful here, but I know I need testing, right? Everyone's like, hey, we got to test. We got to see if it works. 100%. Ads are all about testing and doing lots of tests, but those tests cost money. And we also want to make sure we're being efficient. So I would love to hear, how in the world do you tackle this problem?
So you said 2 things that I think are very spot on and tie into this topic. Number one is you said you do need to have that exploratory spend or testing out, right? You should never have a situation where you have 0% of your spend is non-converting, right? That's just never going to be the case, where there's not a single click in your entire account that didn't drive a sale, right? And then the second thing that you mentioned is the 10% conversion rate, meaning on average it takes 10 clicks. That's a great example to go off of. And so we'll just kind of keep with that for the remainder of this discussion. But you're going to sometimes have let's just pretend you got 10 keywords in one ad group and they all have 1 click. They're all exact match. And maybe 9 of those are 1 click and no sale. And 1 of those is 1 click and 1 sale. So you got this low ACoS keyword that you would increase the bids on. And then you got 9 other keywords that haven't converted yet. And so you'll increase the bids on all of those potentially. But at the ad group level, let's just say you have that 10% conversion rate. And for simplicity, let's just say you have a $10 average order value. And each of those keywords, let's say got a $1 CPC. So you got 10 keywords with $1 CPC each and 1 sale. So you spent $10 in clicks and $10 in sales, you're at 100% ACoS for this ad group. And you've got this one keyword that looks like it's doing great. It's maybe low ACoS and a bunch of other stuff with small spend, no sales. But when you aggregate things up to the ad group level, you're at 100% ACoS. And that's usually where people have a hard time optimizing. Like, what do I do with this ad group? If I drill in and look at the individual items, there's nothing really there that needs optimization. So the solution is basically exactly what we are starting to hint at, which is aggregating these metrics to find what we call the target cost per click. So when you're looking at the 10 clicks in total for this ad group, you realize that the average cost per click that you have, for simple math, let's just say it's a 50% target ACoS, right? So on average, if you got that $10 product and you're trying to get only $5 in spend to get $10 in sales, 50% ACoS, then if you have an average conversion rate of 10%, then on average, you should only be spending 50 cents per click. And so that's going to be the first point of reference of understanding what is your target cost per click. And then we're going to go into the, how we're going to factor that into solving the problem, unless you have any questions so far on that.
No, I like how you're setting up this scenario and I like how you're walking through it, because I agree with you. Like, I think we've all talked to maybe newer sellers or newer advertisers. And so you see those campaigns, you're like, oh my gosh, it has 100% ACoS. Like, this is terrible. Someone who didn't go any deeper than that might even just shut off the campaign, which that's terrible. You should always look deeper, look at the actual targets and search terms. But then I think all of us have been in that scenario. Well, you look deeper and you're like, okay, so there's almost like, from my understanding, nothing that really can be done. Because again, one click, are we expecting 100% conversion rate off everything? No, I don't think any of us should ever expect that. So I love how you set that up. I love how you're kind of painting the picture. I love how you're setting up that, target cost per acquisition or target CPC. So then how does one go about adjusting?
Yeah. So going back to that ad group example, we're saying $1 CPCs, $10 average order value, 50% target ACoS, which means, we can spend up to $5 on a click before we're trying to expect that sale. So you got that one keyword that has one click with $1 spend and a $10 AOV. It's a 10% ACoS, looks great. We got 9 other items that none of them are high spend. They're all just $1, but we can see, rolling things up to the ad group level, that cumulatively we are averaging and a CPC that is beyond what we can technically afford. And so the solution to death by 1,000 cuts is essentially finding out what those target CPCs are and setting bid ceilings. And more specifically, we really need dynamic bid ceilings around those limits. And that would be, you can increase your bids on those low visibility terms up until you hit that bid ceiling. So if in this ad group, let's say you had a whole bunch of other keywords, now new example, where you're averaging 25-cent bids, everything's pretty low, low bids, and they're all getting just like one click across the board. And sure, maybe you had that one keyword that still had a $1 click, one sale, 10% ACoS, that one's doing great. Then you got like another like 9, 15 keywords that are all like 25 cents. They all got like one click or no clicks. Great. Those are good scenarios for low visibility where you can go with the standard best practice, which is just increase bids by 5%, 10%, 20%. All that just kind of depends on how frequently you're making those changes and how aggressive you're trying to be towards your growth. More cautious, 5%, more aggressive, 15, 20%. But it's totally fine to increase bids on those low visibility items up until you hit that target CPC upper limit. And so if that average target CPC we're saying is about 50 cents, then those bids should only go up until 50 cents. And then that's you need to stop those bid increases. And what I see in a lot of accounts, because people usually just have some automation, either they're doing this on bulk sheets a lot of times, or they've got some rule-based automation, but they have keywords that are perpetually in this low visibility state, either because there's another campaign that's taking all the traffic for that keyword, or the keywords themselves just have low volume. But you end up having keywords that are getting like $10, $20 bids, and they're still getting low visibility. And these bid increases just keep getting increased another 5%, another 10%, just over and over and over again. And you have these runaway bids. And sometimes I've seen, especially more competitive categories, like those CPCs genuinely can get up to like $10 CPCs. And so, you're running into some problems there. But that's essentially the fix, is that dynamic bid ceiling. So you would want to calculate that, and how that bid ceiling is calculated, that target cost per click, is essentially just your average order value times your conversion rate times your target ACoS. And that's kind of assuming that the ad group itself has enough data. Another way, the first time I think I was ever on Elizabeth's podcast, we talked about the revenue per click bidding, which is the same thing. So revenue per click times target ACoS, or average order value times conversion rate times target ACoS. Either of those are going to help you figure out what's the average target CPC based on how many clicks it takes on average to get that sale and given that sales price. So that will help you out there. And you want to do that for essentially every single ad group in your account. And then there may be times where the ad group itself has low data because there's like no orders yet, right? So if there's no order,
Yeah.
then you don't have a conversion rate and you don't have an average order value. And in those scenarios, when the ad group itself is low data, that's going to be when we look at the campaign level, and we're going to say, okay, well, what's the average order value and average conversion rate of the campaign? Or you might have a situation where the ad group is like one click, one sale, and that's not going to be, super relevant for us, or not super confident either. So we're going to look one level higher, see how the campaign is doing. That's rolling up now all of the ad groups performance in aggregate, and assuming you have multiple ad groups in that campaign. And then if that campaign is low data, then the next step would be to look at a group of campaigns. And so basically be like that product, all the other like non-brand campaigns for that product or similar products in other campaigns. But you're basically just trying to find what other campaigns have similar average order values and similar conversion rates that we can just treat as a benchmark to help us figure out what that target CPC should be on average. Because when I am auditing these accounts, lots of times I'm seeing $5, $6 bids where like the average CPC that they can afford is like $1. And I'm like, why are you continuing to increase bids when it's already at $5? Like I've seen some where like the bid itself is beyond the sales price. So it'll be like a $10 product and they're bidding $20. I'm like, guys, you have enough, even though this keyword doesn't have any data on it yet, you yourself have enough data to know that that's not an affordable bid. So we're just trying to create like systems that can easily be calculated from within a bulk sheet to figure out those target CPCs.
I love it. I love it. And you've touched on one of my questions. I'm going to clarify and ask a couple more probing questions because I would love listeners to walk away with like, oh, cool. That's exactly how I do it. So the one you touched on was the low data, because that's what I was going to say is, all right, that's great. Like you have sort of that conversion there in that one ad group. What happens when there's no conversions and you're just like incrementally trying to test stuff? So you already said that, you're zooming out to the point at which you have enough data to be able to make, like you said, a calculated decision to have the target acquisition. So my other question, and more of, I think, a clarifying question, because I think you did touch on it, is if I am launching those campaigns, like you said, we'll go back to that classic $10 product, $CPC. And we ran the math and we're like, oh crap, this should only be at 50 cents and I have it at $1. Do you at that point do you lower those dollar bids to that 50-cent ceiling and then leave them there?
I do. Yeah. For low visibility terms, you're generally increasing unless if the current bid is beyond what your bid ceiling would be, then those would be decreases. And I'll even do bid decreases on low visibility keywords with like 0 impressions. So it has 0 impressions, right? And it's got like a $2 bid. But I'm realizing the average CPC that we can afford is 50 cents. So that bid's going to go from $2 down to 50 cents because that's how much we can afford. Now, why would I do that? It's already 0 impressions. The reason is because maybe that keyword's just not getting any traffic, because there's lots of reasons why I could be getting no traffic. It could be that there's another keyword in the campaign that is consuming all the budget. So the campaign's just running out of budget and that other keyword never gets to spend. Or there is another keyword or product somewhere in some other campaign that's generally getting all that traffic, and then that product goes out of stock. So now the traffic redirects to this other product, this other campaign, or that other campaign went out of budget and all the traffic's coming here. Or you just had a really high bid on that other keyword and it was high ACoS. And one day when you reduce the bid on that keyword, now this other keyword that has 0 impressions is now the highest bidder in your account. It's suddenly participating in all the auctions. So for any of those reasons, sometimes you like reduce bids on one keyword or one campaign or whatever. And then all of a sudden these 0 impression keywords start spending like crazy, even though you didn't change the bids. And it's like, well, what happened? I didn't increase the bid or anything. It's like, well, yeah, but suddenly this keyword is eligible for all these impressions that you've been telling Amazon the whole time you're willing to pay, because you have bids at, $2, $5, whatever. It is a good safety to reduce those bids. And if you're thinking, well, 50 cents is too restrictive, I'm not going to get any visibility at 50 cents. Okay, well, that's a separate conversation entirely. That's now a conversation about ACoS, because your target ACoS is usually a factor of like how aggressive are you willing to be. So if you want to get more visibility, you can just increase your target ACoS for that ad group or campaign, which would then allow you to have a higher bid. But you can't, don't be fooled into thinking that you can have a $2 bid with like a 10% conversion rate and a $10 AOV and get away with a 50% ACoS. Like the math just doesn't check out in that sense. So you can be more strategic. And I'll say one more thing here. I do enable, and this is actually, you see I'm wearing my ad lab shirt because we were just talking before we hit record. This shirt came in the mail an hour ago, so I'm excited for it. But within ad labs, when you're optimizing low visibility keywords, which are just like, low clicks, you have the option of that bid ceiling to say 1x target CPC or 2x or 3x. So if you're trying to be more growth oriented, you can actually set the ceilings to be 3x the maximum affordable CPC. And so if you can on average only afford 50 cents. These keyword bids will keep increasing up until $1 and $1.50 before those ceilings come in place, because there's a chance that even though they're low visibility keywords, they could potentially convert 2 times or 3 times better than the average for that ad group. But the reason why I really like those dynamic bid ceilings compared to just a static, never go above $1 for my whole account or $2 for my whole account, is that within your whole account, you're gonna have a bunch of different products that all have different average values, that all have different conversion rates. You need something to be dynamic, and conversion rates are different from week to week. So you want that ceiling to be kind of raising and falling with the ebb and flow of traffic and seasonality and all these things. When you just have one flat bid ceiling that you're kind of applying to all your campaigns, it's too rigid, and you're just going to end up underspending on way too many products and keywords and overspending on a whole other host of keywords. It's sort of just the worst of both worlds, a bit of like a lose-lose situation. Having a dynamic ceiling that's constantly being recalibrated based on the conversion rate trends is what I have found to be the only real efficient way to manage these properly.
I love it. And probably clarify one thing and then also ask you, I think, one more follow-up question. So my clarification, and it sounds like you already touched on it about getting aggressive. So I'm assuming you're sort of excluding, so for my example might be for like this one specific product, I launched this campaign, like single keyword exact match, because I'm trying to like push up on ranking on this specific term. And so therefore, yes, I'm assuming ACoS is going to be high, but like it's a ranking strategy. So like there's sort of like this outlier strategy. And I'm assuming in those cases, you're like, again, your point about don't fool yourself. If you have a $5 CPC and a $10 product, like ACoS is going to be what ACoS is. But again, on ranking campaigns, at least in my opinion, there's other goals outside of just ACoS targets, and rank can get into profitability. So there's that. So you're like, all right, there are cases where, like you said, if you want to be more aggressive, especially using ad labs where it's way more dynamic and easier and built in, you could say, all right, let's get more aggressive on these things. I recognize I'm giving up in terms of profitability, but I'm trying to get visibility. So it makes sense for me.
Yep.
So I'm assuming you exclude those types of things.
Yeah. Ranking keywords are usually going to be high volume, completely separate strategy. Even that target ACoS is usually a bit dynamic for me. So usually for the accounts I'm managing, we want to be in a range where it's like between 30 to 40% target ACoS. But what you'll end up finding is, let's just say you got a keyword that's currently at 40% ACoS. When you lower that target to 35% and you actually get it down to 35%, that bid just goes from being like maybe $1.25 to $1, but you moved from being like the number one highest bidder to now like tied for 50th. The amount of volume that you lose in just a small decrease, especially in those really crowded places where there's just a huge list of bidders, a small decrease can actually lead to a large decrease in volume. In those scenarios, what you end up realizing is you have sort of like a bell curve, right? Of like how much traffic you get and how much profitability you're getting. And you're trying to find somewhere in the sweet spot where like you're not losing all this money, but like that target ACoS is usually going to be a bit different. So for that one keyword in particular, you might say, okay, this one's going to be 40% because when we lower it, we lose all the visibility. So you're going to have a slightly higher target ACoS there. And then you're going to just have to make up for that with some other keywords that are now going to be saying, okay, these ones are profitability focused, 20% target ACoS here, just so that we can afford ourselves some budget to go after those more important keywords.
That is a fantastic point. And if you're just listening to this on the side, you're not seeing my nod my head vigorously as Stephen is kind of describing those dynamics, which I appreciate your nuance in that. Like, for example, like we just onboarded an account this week and there's one product doing 75% of the sales. She's been managing it herself. And she's like, all right, these specific terms that are really important. And we're like, tell us where they are on the account. Like, let's get this information from you. Cause we know, like you said, if you do too aggressive optimizations on like those really key terms, especially if a product is super important, it can completely fall off the map. And that's definitely something you want to hedge against. So I appreciate that nuance. And so my last question to you on doing this, because I think we've provided enough information for sellers to, be able to go on their accounts and sort of calculate these things. And I know you have resources for this, so maybe we'll plug those as well. Last question would be when it comes to date ranges and what date ranges you look at, and then maybe also how often you do this. What are you looking at?
So date ranges are also very highly dynamic. For me, there are times where I'm going with shorter date ranges because I want all my bid calculations to be based off of like a recent trend, like a recent spike in spend or whatever. And then there are other times where I'm going for longer date ranges. If conversion rates and things have been pretty steady, then I'm going to do some I want more clicks in my date range. So I'm usually going somewhere between 14 to 30 days. Sometimes I'm going up to 2 months, especially when calculating like campaign placement settings. I really want to make sure I have enough data confidence there. And then for smaller kind of one-off ad hoc, like smaller tweak adjustments, I'm going 14 days, but I'm only optimizing like the top 10 worst performers in the account. I'm not doing all like 10,000 keywords getting optimized, not on a short date range like that. So with these bid ceilings, it's kind of the exact same thing. And just so you guys know, you can totally see this yourself. Like you can download a bulk sheet and just filter out for all of, like, calculate what the target CPC is just at an account level. If going to every individual ad group's a little, too complex, just figure out what's the average CPC for your entire account. And then look at all of the keywords where the bid is above that target CPC and look at all the ones that are just like really low clicks or no sales yet. And you can just start tallying that up. And AdLabs is free to sign up, by the way. So you can see this completely for free. No credit card required or anything, no catch, just like sign up, say optimize low visibility keywords. And then you can apply a filter for what are all the bid increase opportunities versus what are all the bid decrease opportunities. And you'll usually see that there's a lot of bid decrease opportunities, assuming that if you've been regularly harvesting. Sometimes when there's not a lot of increase or decrease opportunities, it's because you don't have any low visibility keywords because you haven't done any keyword harvesting. Like you have 10 targets in your whole entire account and there's like 10,000 search terms. So like that's a separate issue. But just so you guys can know and check it out yourself.
That's amazing. No, we'll plug that in the description. So you can go grab the link. Like you said, go check this out. Let the software do it for you. AdLabs is pretty cool. And you guys are doing some awesome stuff. So I'm sure everyone will appreciate that. Last poke, because I'm 100% with you on like dynamic date ranges and it depends and all the above. If somebody was doing this for the first time, they're like, never really mess with these things. I've just kind of been doing my thing. I've never really checked how high I let bids get. Do you recommend sort of like that longer, like 30-day range or like 60, or what would you recommend they check?
Yeah, that's a good question. What I usually show people during like onboarding is we'll look at the last 60, 90 days at first, and then we're going to switch to a weekly view and look at the conversion rate trends over the last 60, 90 days. And if we're seeing any big trends, that's going to determine where it is, because I can't just say use a good best practices last 30 days, because like for some accounts, it's like last 30 days, but then like the last 2 weeks was Valentine's Day and ACOS has spiked since then. Like that was a real life scenario that happened this last week. So, in those cases, it's like, okay, we really have to optimize based on since Valentine's Day when conversion rates fell 50%. Using the last 30 days is going to mess you up.
Got it. Okay. So you're saying if account has been steady, and how you track that is last 7 days. If you're pretty steady as she goes, then great. Zoom out, use a 30-day, get more data. If you've seen a lot of volatility, things are up and down, I agree with you. Valentine's Day, throw a wrench, and honestly, more categories than I thought it would. Yeah. There's some of our accounts that are affected, and you're like, what? That? I guess. Okay. And so you're saying, like, if you're seeing those trends, then it's like, all right, don't factor sort of those crazy peaks, because it goes the other way, right? Like if conversion rates are down, if you're looking at a long date range, it's like, oh, wow, this thing's been converting, when like, wait, no, conversion rates drops, you're actually losing money.
Yep.
Amazing. Well, this has been fantastic. A fantastic tip. I really, really appreciate it. I'm sure the audience got a lot of value. Again, links to the description for AdLabs. But if somebody wanted to reach out and get a hold of you, how would they do that?
Yeah, LinkedIn's the best way. Just send me a connect request and say Junglr in your message when you're trying to connect, so I can filter through who's the real people versus the spam
bots. Yes. Well, I appreciate that. We'll have links to all of that in the description, and I hope you got some value out of today's call.
All right. Thank you, guys.